All right, guys, we're going to give everybody a few more minutes and then we'll get started.
All right.
All right, guys, we are going to get started. Can you guys all hear me?
Yep.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Does anybody have any questions about any of those announcements that I sent you guys out on Blackboard about assignments or anything along those lines? Okay. Just moving forward before we get into lecture, let's remember if you have not turned in your chapter 1 study guide, those were already due, but you guys still have an opportunity to hand them in. You just might not get full credit. Chapter 2 study guide is due this coming Sunday because we're going to go over the rest of chapter 2 here. You guys should be able to finish it up. And then chapter 3 will be due the following Sunday. I believe it's the 28th, 27th. One of those, but I'll send you an announcement on that. We will finish up on the endocrine system today. If I feel as though you guys are overwhelmed or we're just kind of tired or whatnot, then we can continue with the cardiovascular system on Monday before we review for our exam. However, I would like to try to get a little bit of it done just because there is a lot for you guys to know on that. Okay, so we're gonna jump right in. If you guys are confused, just stop me and let me know and ask whatever questions you guys might have. Okay, so your endocrine system is basically a system of glands that secretes hormones that control bodily function. Okay, so they're going to be things that control mood. Okay, so when you guys are feeling kind of cranky or, you know, super happy, those types of things, there's hormones that actually control that and are released in your body as a response to that. Also growth and development. So this is where growth hormone is going to come into play. Testosterone is going to come into play. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Tissue function, how your muscles actually contract or how your nervous system works to get your muscles to contract. A lot of that is controlled by the endocrine system, as well as metabolism, which we haven't talked very much about, but we'll get into in the next unit on how our body uses our food, breaks it down into the form of energy. Okay. It consists of host organs. Okay. Your host organs are basically your glands. Your chemical messengers are then your hormones, and then your target cells are the receptors that these actual hormones are going to. Okay. Target cells bind specifically to hormones. So once we get into the lock and key theory, I'll kind of explain that a little bit more. Okay. Moving on, obviously endocrine, it just means hormone secreting. So we talked about how endocrine system is full of glands that secrete hormones. Okay, so hormone secreted will cause muscle contraction. Okay, we somewhat talked about that last week. It will help out with protein and fat synthesis. Okay, so protein synthesis means to build more muscle, things of that nature. Fat synthesis, the same thing, whether you are burning fat, whether you are creating more fat. Okay, activation of certain enzymes in your body that we need biologically, and it's also the bodily reaction to stress. Okay, which is going to come into play once we talk about cortisol and things of that nature a little bit later in the lecture. Okay, so your pituitary gland, which is in your brain, is the master gland. Okay, it's got an anterior, posterior, and intermediate globe. So all I want you guys to remember is that it's 2 or 3 globes. Okay, you don't have to specifically know which or what is secreted from what. Okay, but your pituitary gland is your master gland that's kind of controlling everything in the endocrine system. Okay, your hypothalamus is also in your brain. Okay, it's a little bit a smaller region of the brain, and this releases hormones that help regulate body temperature. Okay, so if you're feeling cold, you're hot, you're sweating, you're clammy, all those types of things. Okay, your thyroid gland is in your neck, right around here. Okay, these produce hormones that regulate metabolism, that affect growth and the function of many of your body systems. Okay, so we'll go over thyroid gland a little bit later as well. And then you have your adrenal gland that is located on your kidneys. Okay, and it releases things in response to stress. So once we get into cortisol, adrenaline, epinephrine, those types of things. Okay, so you kind of need to generally know what these 4 are and somewhat what they do. You don't need to know super specific, but I just kind of want you guys to go over these 4. So if we have any questions on these, make sure you let me know. Most importantly, you need to know pituitary is your master gland that's controlling most everything. Okay. All right, so if we're talking about that lock and key theory, so I was talking about how hormones attach to certain receptors. Okay, so every nucleus in a cell technically has a lock. So you guys are going to think of like a lock with a key on your door. Okay, every hormone is that key. Okay, so it's a reaction between the lock and key that will alter a specific code in your actual cell. Okay, so there are certain receptors that can only go to certain cells. Okay, so it's like a lock and key. You can't send any receptors to any cell. They have to find that specific receptor that has that key for it. Okay, and once that happens, you're actually altering the code that is in your cell. So think like your cell houses your DNA, all that type of stuff. So things that it might alter: protein synthesis. Remember, we're talking about hypertrophy. We are growing our muscles. Carb metabolism, that's what you are using to generate energy throughout activity and exercise. So things of that nature. Okay, down regulation in response to the lock and key theory, it's when receptors become unresponsive. And this can happen to many things, deficiencies in your body, things of that nature. Okay, so basically the locks somewhat change, and then the cells are not able to connect or to go into, or the key is not able to go into the cell. Okay, so basically your receptors become unresponsive. So this is all you need to know for down regulation, that they literally become unresponsive. Okay, if you guys, this is also in your book, if you kind of look at this, you'll see how every cell or every receptor kind of has a different key. Okay, so you are looking for those hormones that have that key to fit into that lock. That's basically what the lock and key theory is. It might seem a little bit goofy to think about it this way, but you just have to know there's only certain cells where certain receptors can go. Okay, so you just can't send any receptor to any cell. That's what you guys need to get from this theory. Okay. All right, so we're going to talk about some specific hormones that relate to exercise and activity. There's a million hormones in your body. We are not going to be focusing on everything. We're just going to be focusing on the things that are pertinent to this class. So if you guys are taking anatomy and physiology, you'll learn much, much more about this, okay? You guys have probably all heard what insulin is, okay? But it regulates glucose metabolism, okay? So glucose is something that you use. It's a substance in your body that you use to break down for energy. Glucose basically means sugar. So it can be when you're eating carbohydrates, which we'll get into all of this, your carbohydrates either get stored as glucose, which is directly in your blood, or glycogen that is in your muscles and your liver. Okay, so if you see insulin, it regulates glucose metabolism. So it's regulating that metabolism in your blood. Okay, so it shuttles glucose into a cell for use for exercise, okay, or into the liver for storage for later. So we kind of talked about that as well. So what insulin is basically doing in your body is decreasing the blood sugar levels, okay? So you guys have to understand insulin decreases blood sugar levels. So if it's getting too high, insulin comes in to decrease those levels, okay? So if you think of people with diabetes, they have high blood sugar due to decreased insulin. So this is why a lot of the times they need to give themselves insulin so they can decrease their blood sugar, okay? So remember, insulin regulates glucose metabolism and it decreases your actual blood sugar, okay? Now, when we go to glucagon, it basically does the opposite, okay? So it helps regulate glucose metabolism, but it raises your blood sugar, okay? So insulin lowers your blood sugar, glucagon raises your blood sugar, okay? So it raises your blood sugar during things like sleep, okay, when you're resting, and then also during exercise, if we're getting low on energy and we need those other stores, glucagon would come in and try to raise our blood sugar, so we'd be able to use that. And after prolonged low blood glucose levels. So if you haven't eaten in a while and you guys feel that kind of drained feeling, okay, this is when glucagon would come into play. It would try to be released to get those stores from your liver and your muscles and move them into your blood so you could use them basically for energy, okay? So glucagon raises blood levels, insulin decreases blood levels. So remember that, okay? Questions on any of that stuff thus far? Okay. All right. So the effects of exercise on these two hormones. So exercise and activity cause an uptake of glucose by the cells. Okay. So we talked about glucose being an energy source. So you guys are going to hear glucose, glycogen, all that stuff over and over throughout this course, and you'll obviously learn about it a little bit more. But just remember, so exercise and activity causes an uptake of glucose by the cells in your body. Okay, so we're using up the glucose that we have in our body for activity and exercise. Okay, so blood glucose then obviously decreases if we're using it. So then insulin shifts glucose from blood to cells. Okay, so it's taking that glucose from the blood, putting it into the cells so we don't have too much blood sugar flowing around while we are exercising and doing some form of activity. Okay, glucagon responds to maintain a certain level of blood glucose. So if insulin is pulling it out of the blood into the cells, you have that glucagon there to control that so insulin actually doesn't pull out too much of it. So they both need to work together. So obviously if you have some deficiency in one area or you don't have enough insulin, then you might have higher blood glucose levels because you don't have that insulin to pull it out. So you have to think in terms of exercise and activity. These two are working together to keep that nice normal level. Okay, questions on how they work for exercise and activity? All right, okay, same thing. Okay, so then you guys have also obviously all heard of testosterone. Okay, so testosterone is secreted by the testes, ovaries, and adrenal gland. Okay, men have about 10 times more testosterone than women. Women still do have testosterone, but it's not as prevalent as it is in men. Okay, so when you guys think of testosterone, I want you to think of testosterone as being the primary hormone for muscle growth. Okay, so if we think about the primary hormone for muscle growth, if men have more men have more testosterone than women, in theory, it should be easier for a man to grow muscle size. And normally, if you look at someone genetically, normally a man is able, or a male is able to grow more muscle than women, okay? So males have about 10 times more than women, and it's the primary hormone for muscle growth, okay? It synthesizes protein for muscle hypertrophy. So if we just talked about muscle growth, it's synthesizing the protein that you have in your body, okay, and then also the protein in your muscles to actually help that muscle grow in size. So remember, we have hypertrophy. Remember, hypertrophy is that actual muscle size, okay? Indirectly, testosterone increases secretion of growth hormone. We will talk about what growth hormone is in a few slides. It enhances nervous system function. Okay, so remember, we have that nervous system connection, the mind-body connection to our muscles. Okay, so it enhances that system. It allows us to fire our muscles more quickly, more powerfully, for more sustained contractions. And like I also just said, it increases force production. So this happens by increasing neurotransmitter activation. So remember, we talked about those neurotransmitters last time when we're talking about muscle contraction. Okay, so it increases that neurotransmitter activation. Remember, you need that activation in order for your muscles to contract. Okay, so these are all the things directly or indirectly that testosterone does for your body. Okay, how you would increase secretion of testosterone in your body. So there are certain ways we work out that should help increase testosterone in our body. So the first thing would be large muscle group exercises. Okay, I know we haven't fully gone over exercises so much. We'll continue that on Thursday. But so if we're thinking about deadlift, power exercises, squats, we can also think of upper body exercises such as bench press, okay? So it's using large muscle group exercises. So if you're thinking about a deadlift or a squat, it's using glutes, quads, hamstrings. Those are large muscle groups, okay? Multi-joint exercises. So remember, we talked about multi-joint exercises, use at least 2 joints. So if I'm thinking about a squat, I'm using my hips, I'm also using my knees. And yes, technically you are also using your ankles. So that is a multi-joint exercise, okay? If I'm doing a push-up, bench press, or any type of row, I'm using my shoulder, I'm also using my elbow, I'm also using my wrist. So these are multi-joint exercises. Multi-joint exercises recruit a lot larger muscle groups and recruit a lot more muscles in general, instead of just isolating one muscle group, okay? Exercises would be 85 to 95% intensity, meaning 85 to 95% of your 1 rep max. So think, if I can squat 150 pounds, I'm just picking a number, okay? That number for here, the weight that you would want to be would be 85 to 95% of that 150. So it is a high intensity exercise with a lot of weights, okay? You would be doing 3 to 6 sets for 8 to 15 repetitions. So I know we have talked about this. So if you look at the sets and reps, you're doing a lot of sets and you're doing a lot of reps because you are also looking for that total work that you've done to increase the hypertrophy in your muscles, to grow that muscle, okay? It says about a 30 to 60 second rest, okay? So that's not too long of a rest. It's not like we're doing strength exercises and we're resting for 2 to 3 minutes in between each set. Okay, here we would only be doing 30 to 60 seconds, okay? And then also another thing that does help release more testosterone is 2 or more years of consistent resistance training, okay? If you haven't been resistance training at all and you go jump into a resistance training workout, you're not going to be secreting tons and tons of testosterone. It's something that you have to condition your body to do. So obviously, if you have 2 years under your belt, you'll be able to secrete testosterone a little bit more. Okay, you can increase it in your system. Any questions on testosterone? No. All right, moving along. Okay, another one you guys have all obviously heard of, estrogen. This is also secreted by the testes, ovaries, and adrenal glands. Okay, in comparison to testosterone, women have 10 times more estrogen than men. Okay, it's the primary hormone for reproduction. Okay, so women obviously have more estrogen. You need estrogen to be used in childbirth, okay? So it's also a primary influence on fat disposition on hips, buttocks, and thighs. So if you think about the way most men and females are, their body makeup is made up, women tend to carry more fat in their hips, buttocks, and thighs. That's just a genetic thing. Part of that is also due to estrogen, okay? Growth hormone, okay, so we talked about that, or I said that we were going to talk about growth hormone. This is another important hormone that you guys will need to know about when it comes to your study guide and your exam, okay? So your growth hormone is secreted through your pituitary gland, okay? And it's important in overall growth, not just muscle tissue. So if we were when we were talking about testosterone, testosterone is needed for muscle growth, okay? Growth hormone is overall growth. So that doesn't just mean muscles. It means bones, all those types of things, your overall growth in your entire body, okay? It does help maintain blood glucose levels and also stimulates the release of fatty acids. And we'll talk about why we need fatty acids once we get to that unit, okay? So other things that growth hormone does, it enhances amino acid absorption. I'm not sure if you guys know what amino acids are, but proteins are made up of amino acid. Okay, so you have to have you have to have growth hormone, excuse me, to enhance amino acid absorption. Okay, and that means you need to have this growth hormone in order to help repair the muscle that, or the protein that you are trying to build for muscle hypertrophy. Okay, this hormone is most important to childhood development. You guys will need to know that. Okay, so it's overall growth. So it takes effect in metabolism, organ function, growth of bone, and muscle. So all of these things combined, okay, are what growth hormone does, not just what testosterone does, which is specifically muscle growth. Okay, so make sure you guys know the two differences between these two. Okay, how to increase our growth hormone levels within our bodies. Okay, we would want to increase lactic acid buildup. Okay, so growth hormone helps clear out the lactic acid. If you don't know what lactic acid is, don't worry, we will discuss this in another further chapter. However, lactic acid is the acidity buildup in your muscles, your pH balance in your muscles. Okay, so it is that burn you feel when you've just been running like crazy and your muscles are starting to burn, or you are doing a very strenuous exercise and you feel that muscle burn. Okay, so things that are going to increase that increase lactic acid are going to be high intensity exercises, whether it be plyometrics, strength training, power training, those types of things increase your lactic acid buildup, okay? It also raises testosterone levels. So you need growth hormone in your body in order to have good testosterone levels. So various exercises and intensities, just like we talked about in the previous slide with testosterone, okay? So just make sure you're checking that out so you know you should be doing exercises that also increase testosterone levels in your body as well, okay? Deep sleep and good sleep help increase your growth hormone in your body, okay? It allows your body to produce more. So think about if you don't sleep very well. I mean, I know I don't sleep very well, but I know I did as a kid. So growth hormone is something that is replenished in your body a lot of the times with deep sleep and good rest. Okay, and also vigorous exercise triggers a secretion for recovery of growth hormone. Okay, so we have to have vigorous exercise to start releasing growth hormone, and then we need to have that recovery after that vigorous exercise to repair everything. Okay, any questions thus far on anything that I've gone over? All right, moving along. Okay, so cortisol, remember we talked about cortisol being secreted by the adrenal glands. Okay, so cortisol is something that is in response to stress, whether it's good stress or bad stress, okay? So it's primarily responsible for carbohydrate, fat, and protein metabolism, okay? So carbohydrate, all that metabolism is what you're doing. You're breaking down those substrates, which is your carbohydrate, fat, and protein, to get energy, to create energy for your body, okay? It also helps with repair and remodeling process, okay? So repairing process for your muscles, okay, after you work out, you have to repair your muscles to grow your muscles. Same thing with repairing in bones and things like that throughout the years, okay? Even though you need cortisol, if you have too much cortisol, it can actually cause negative effects. So a negative effect of having too much cortisol, so think you're a person that is always stressed out, you have constant cortisol running through your body, it unfortunately will convert amino acid into glucose. You do not want to take your amino acids, which is your protein in your body, and convert them to energy at all, okay? Your protein in your body is supposed to be used for recovery, okay? It is the last thing in your body to be used for energy, and it's used for energy if there is too much cortisol or times of starvation and things of that nature, okay? So very high exercise, if you aren't able to recover from that, or you've done several days of very high intensity exercise, you can have a lot of cortisol released in your system, okay? Starvation and malnourishment, obviously, if you are not eating, okay, cortisol is then taking your amino acids, your protein, and converting that into glucose that is giving your body energy, okay? Or the no low carb diet. So I know a lot of you have heard about low carb diets out there, and yes, everybody is different, and it depends on what you are trying to accomplish with this no low carb diet. But if you are an athlete and you are an active individual, carbs give you energy. Okay, so you need those carbs. If you don't have carbs in your system, cortisol will come in and takes the amino acids and uses that for energy. Okay, so you need carbs to fuel your body. Okay. Secretion is increased by low glycogen stores. So low glycogen stores are those carb stores in your liver and your muscle. So if you have not eaten properly to recover your body after exercise, or you don't have a lot of carbohydrate stores within your body, you have low glycogen stores, okay? So in that case, secretion of cortisol increases, okay? And it tends to affect type 2 muscle fibers more than type 1 muscle fibers. So think about, we talked about those type 2 muscle fibers are those larger muscle groups that produce a lot more power. So cortisol is going to affect those muscle groups negatively if there's too much of that in your system, more than they would type 1 fibers. Okay. To increase our cortisol levels and keep them in optimal cortisol response, you want a variation in your training, okay? If you're one of those people that goes out and does 5 high intensity exercise workouts a week and gives your body no proper rest and recovery, cortisol levels are gonna be a little bit out of whack, okay? So you have to have that variation in exercise, or variation in training, excuse me. So you have a high intensity exercise, the next day you might have complete rest and recovery. The next day you might have active recovery, which means just a much lower intense workout, okay? So just like I talked about here, active recovery, lower intensity days, okay? Complete recovery is also needed, okay? And so complete recovery means absolutely no exercise. I mean, yes, you can still move around, but complete recovery requires proper nutrition. So you have to eat for what you are training for, make sure you are fueling your body, adequate sleep, as well as a decrease in stress, okay? So if you can see that stress always sneaks into where the word cortisol is, because it is a stress response. If we have too much stress in our lives, whether it's emotional stress or actual physical stress, it can affect the cortisol levels in our body, okay? Any questions on cortisol? Guys, just as a reminder, if you are on here and you want to get credit, you need to have your videos on, because I know a lot of you do not have your videos on. So if you don't have them on, you are going to not get credit. Okay. All right, we're moving along. Sorry, guys. Okay, so catecholamines. Okay, so these are things that, like epinephrine and norepinephrine. I know you guys have heard that. That's also somewhat of a stress response. Okay, so epinephrine helps prepare the body for activity. So think that fight or flight response. Like if you guys get scared or whatever and you need to run away, that's epinephrine. It gets your body moving, gets your body working to go away, okay? It increases your heart rate and stroke volume, okay? We will talk about what stroke volume is in the cardiovascular unit. However, basically it's the amount of blood in your body that gets pumped out with each heartbeat, okay? With one heartbeat, basically. It also raises blood sugar, okay? It increases circulation, increases ventilation. So think about when you guys are ever getting hyped up to do a workout, whatever it might mean, if you're feeling anxious, nervous, you can feel your heart rate go up, Okay, you can feel your breathing rate go up, all those types of things. Your blood sugar rises, your body temperature rises. Okay, so that is what epinephrine and norepinephrine are doing for your body. Okay, it can also help relax the body after activity. Okay, so it's going to decrease everything that's above us. Okay, so talking about like heart rate, it'll actually decrease the heart rate. It'll lower your blood sugar levels. Decrease circulation, decrease ventilation, allowing yourself to relax. Okay, so it also helps relax your muscles. Okay. Thyroid hormones. I said we were going to talk about this a little bit. So thyroid hormones are responsible for all human metabolism. So we talked about metabolism is taking those substrates, carbs, fats, proteins, and using it for energy in your body. Okay, so energy metabolism, you use it for movement, obviously. So your BMR is your basal metabolic rate, how much energy you use at rest in your body. Okay, protein synthesis, which is also, like we've talked about before, growing your muscles in your body, actually increasing them in size. It affects heart rate, and it also affects body temperature. So if you guys have ever heard of hyperthyroidism and hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism basically means you have too much thyroid hormone running through your body. So a lot of those times people like that have a very, very high metabolism, so it's easy for them to lose weight. Okay, they have a high heart rate, things of that nature. If you have hypothyroidism, you have a low metabolism, so you have an easier chance of then gaining weight and things of that nature. Your blood pressure might be lower, your heart rate might be lower, things of that nature. So I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of that, but that's what the thyroid hormone does. It's responsible for all human metabolism in your body, how your body uses things for energy. Okay. Just things to remember. Okay, so effects on exercise. So testosterone, remember, it affects muscle growth. Okay, growth hormone is basically overall growth. Okay, so also including bones, things of that nature. Okay, and metabolism. All right, and then cortisol helps control metabolism, but may hinder performance if overtraining or without proper nutrition. Okay, so this is a good slide to go back to reference really simply what these hormones do for our body during exercise. Okay, muscle remodeling is a hormonal response. Okay, so we need to have our protein, it needs to synthesize, it needs to grow, so we need those hormones to help with that. Okay, so basically remodeling your bone is a damage of muscle fibers, like I just said. So technically, when you do resistance training exercises, you get tiny little micro tears in your muscle. It's nothing that you can see or anything like that, and it's supposed to happen, but that's what then hormones and protein come in and to help synthesize that. Okay, so this is also an inflammatory response. Okay, obviously, so after a workout, if you've done like a resistance training workout, you might feel a little inflamed, like your muscles feel a little bit larger. That's a normal response. Okay, that's when we need to have rest and recovery to resynthesize all of that. I just said synthesize new proteins. Okay, and hypertrophy, obviously. We've talked about that this entire time. Hypertrophy is actually growing your muscles, growing your muscle in actual size. So you need hormones to do all of this, whether it be testosterone, growth hormone, cortisol, all of those above. Okay. We've basically talked about all of that. Okay, so the overall hypertrophic response depends on in your body. So how much hypertrophy you actually have in your body. I have no clue why that word is so hard for me to say today, but it's the amount of tissue that you've actually stimulated in your body. Okay, so we talked about that with hypertrophy before. It's the amount of actual damage that you do to your body. So the amount, you're counting the reps, you're counting the sets, you're counting the weights, you're counting the rest, all of that combined. So only the fibers that are stimulated are actually going to adapt. So if we're thinking about testosterone, growth hormone, we talked about those large muscle groups. So you guys have to do multi-joint exercises, okay, and use certain intensity to really get that response, okay? Upper body versus lower body workouts, and that versus a full body workout. So if you guys really want that hypertrophy response, if you guys are just doing upper body one day and lower body one day, you have to make sure that you sync that so you're not doing more upper body and doing more lower body, okay? You have to make sure you're doing a good amount of work for both of them to synthesize that muscle growth, okay? Sometimes people will do full body workouts for this, and even though that's fine, I'm a big proponent for full body workouts, but if you're really looking for muscle growth and size, okay, that might not give you enough exercises for, say, the upper body and the lower body to get that hypertrophic response, okay? Does that make sense to everybody? The amount of tissue remodeling that is needed, you have to make sure you actually did enough. So this comes into intensity and the amount of sets and reps that you actually do, okay? If I want to grow my muscle size and I go in and I start lifting at 60 to 70% of my 1 rep max, that's not going to cause that response, okay? So we looked at testosterone. We wanted that 85 to 95% of my 1 rep max intensity to really do enough to get that those hormones secreted in my body to help with muscle growth, okay? Amount of tissue repair actually achieved. So make sure you actually recover completely. So we talked about the recovery process and those little micro tears in your muscles. You have to recover. So proper recovery means active rest or actual rest, and that actual rest includes proper sleep, okay? No stress. And also make sure that you guys are eating enough to fuel your body to repair. So if I've gone and done, and we'll get into this in the nutrition aspect of this, but if I've gone and done a strenuous workout, I have to eat carbs to replenish my glycogen stores in my body, along with protein, because I need to put protein into my body to help with my muscle growth. Okay. And then volume of work and type of program. So that obviously goes into effect with the hypertrophy response, okay? The volume of work, that is consistent with what I said about you have to have a certain amount of sets and reps. So the sets are between 3 and 6, and the reps are between 8 and 15, okay? And the type of program would obviously be, are you doing aerobic training? Are you doing resistance training? Obviously, if you want to increase testosterone, you're probably going to be doing resistance training, and you have to have that variation in the programs, but also make sure you are doing enough intensity to get that response, to get that hormonal response in your body. Okay, questions on this thus far? We are almost done. Okay, so I just talked about this, so we don't have to talk about this again. Okay, so I know I just spit out a lot at you guys, okay? Hormones can get a little bit confusing, all right? So I really encourage you guys to make sure that you have read this chapter in your book. These chapters are not long, okay? I don't know, this one might be like 10 pages. It's been a while since I've gone through it fully, but it breaks everything down very simply for you guys. Like I said, you're not gonna need to know in complete, utter detail everything about your endocrine system or all these systems that we are talking about. All you need to know right now is what we were going over, and it's response to actual exercise and activity. Okay, so make sure you go through this slide, and then make sure you guys go through your book. This will help you to pretty easily fill out that last portion of your Chapter 2 study guide. Okay, any questions whatsoever on the endocrine system or what I talked to you guys about today? Either you guys are really quiet or just nobody wants to say anything today, which is totally fine. I get it. Okay, so we are going to stop here today. I feel like I will lose you guys if I try to go into a whole other system. So this is the plan before you guys all get off. Thursday, we are going to be in class, okay? So everybody show up in room 260 Thursday at 12 p.m., okay? We will go over proper form on things, things of that nature, and then we can also start to go over this if we have covered all of that and we don't need to do any more. So we could use our Thursday class to do this. Talking about our Thursday class, remember you guys have to look through that PowerPoint that I put up. It's very, very short, okay? And then you need to look over those 2 videos that I sent you. If you don't look at those videos on the PowerPoint, you will not be able to answer the assignment that I gave you properly, okay? Don't overthink it. You don't need to know everything of it because I was just giving you guys general information to start our topic or our conversation on actual proper form and mechanics. So if anyone has actual questions on that, just email me. I will go over them with you guys. There are some of you that have not finished assignments in that Thursday class. I sent out an update on that as well. Look over it. There is no reason for you guys to just not hand in an assignment and get 0 out of 10. Okay, that 0 really affects your grade, and there's no reason that we can't get almost full points on these assignments because they're not super hard. Okay, and I don't expect you guys to be completely right on everything. So make sure you look over that and see what you guys have zeros in, or if you have questions on it, and ask me. Okay, then Monday, I have not decided if we will be in class or not. I will let you guys know that on Thursday when I see you in class. We will be going over the cardiovascular system. And then we will be reviewing all 3 of these chapters for your first exam. Nobody freak out about your first exam yet. I will go over all of that with you guys when we come into play. But remember, it is an online exam, so you will be able to use your notes, your videos, things of that nature. Okay, so nobody needs to freak out about it. Okay, any questions at all on anything?
How long is the exam?
The exam, I want to say it's 50 questions, but you guys will have a good 2 hours to do it. So once you start it, you'll be able to turn it off, but it won't be that difficult. And I will go over and give you a study guide of exactly what you guys need to know for your exam. Even if it's,
you just answered my second question then.
Say it again?
I said you just answered the question. I was going to ask, can we have a study guide for that one, but you just answered.
I'll give you guys a study guide. Don't worry. I give everybody study guides with this stuff. So plus it's your first exam. I want you guys to know what you're in for when you get look at it. Okay. Any other questions?
How much is the exam as far as like the points?
It's just out of 50 points, but it's weighted a little bit more, but it's not weighted that much more than your assignments. So it's not like you guys are in a class where if you completely bomb these exams that you will like fail the class. Okay. With that being said, because it is an online exam and you guys can use your notes, you guys will be fine. I promise. Okay. We will go over everything together on Monday before you actually have to take your exam at home. Okay. You'll have adequate time to take it as well, so no worries.
All right, I feel good now.
All right, if you guys don't have questions, you can sign off. Otherwise, I will stick around for a minute if anyone else has questions. And I will see you guys in class on Thursday. All right, have a good day, guys.
I have a question, like, far as the hormones and stuff.
Yep.
So, like, when you like talk about like the hormones, do you mean like overall or just like certain parts of them?
So if we're talking in terms of actual hormones, I just want you guys to think of it in terms of the actual hormone. You don't need to break down the hormones. You don't need to know exactly how they're secreted or anything like that. All I want you to know is the effect that that actual hormone is going to have on your body during exercise and activity and what it's used for.
I'm thinking we have to break them down. Oh, okay.
No, you don't have to break them down. Just remember that like lock and key theory is basically only certain hormones can respond to certain cells kind of thing. So no, this is a very small overview, okay? If you take anatomy or physiology and biology and stuff, you will go way more into this. This is just, hey, what does testosterone do? How do we increase it? What does growth hormone do? How do we increase it? That's about it. You don't have to know any other crazy things. Okay? Yep.
Yeah, because I was lost for a second.
That's okay. Hormones do get a little crazy sometimes. So just honestly, like your book lays it all out